All right. Good morning, good evening, as the case may be. Hello, everybody. And Patrick, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, before we start this out, shout out to Sisla. Thank you for helping me produce this. And go check out Strange.love. We got a lot of stuff going on at Strangelove Labs. So today we have Patrick Dunlop here from Jackal Protocol. Hey, Patrick, tell the folks, hey.
Hey, my name is Patrick. I'm one of the co-founders of Jackal Labs, and we're the core development entity behind the Jackal Protocol, which is a Cosmos L1 built for data storage primarily. So we have this decentralized physical infrastructure network of storage providers, and they provide scalable off-chain data storage to blockchains, so you can access it on-chain. And that's kind of what we do.
Cool. Do you want to tell folks a little bit more about, so that's a very simple explanation, off-chain data storage on-chain.
Yeah.
But this is a problem that is incredibly complicated. And there's a lot of different technical solutions. So there's a few different directions we can go in. We can talk about the particular technical solutions for Jackal. I think folks would like to hear a little bit more about your journey. We've been chatting for quite a while, and it's I know you've had quite the journey. So which one do you want to kind of tackle first?
Yeah, we can start up with the journey, and then we can kind of get into the different options and why data storage is kind of complicated and difficult. So Jackal Labs, myself and my co-founder Marcin, who's our CTO, we started trying to build an e-discovery tool for court. So we were working in digital forensics investigations. When your liquidity pools got exploited, they would usually hire someone like us to try to figure out who the guy behind the liquidity pool exploit is, or girl sometimes. So we thought this whole digital evidence thing is kind of difficult, and there's no kind of chain of custody with digital evidence. It's very hard to kind of make sure that when you get to court, you have the original copy rather than a copy of the original copy, and there's all kinds of files flying around in the legal process. So what if we use blockchain technology to create an e-discovery tool, is what our idea was. So that was fun. We started building that on Polygon originally. We built it. It was all good to go. And then we realized that there's this issue with digital evidence where you actually have to air gap everything and have a clean forensic environment. So no public clouds allowed. You can't use Google or Microsoft Azure or Alibaba Cloud, depending on where you are in the world. So you need to have all these hard drives that would just stack up on your desk. And that makes it very difficult to create SaaS products where they need to be cloud-based. So is it possible to create a clean forensic environment in the cloud? Was our original idea. So what does that require? Only the end user with their private key can access it. In theory, it needs to be clean. It needs to make sure that you have proper chain of custody of who can access that file and all that good stuff. So okay, there must be a solution on blockchain for that. Someone must be building it. And every other using good. Bad.
Hey, you're cutting out a little bit. Can you hear me?
Did you lose me?
Yeah, you're just cutting out a little bit. Yeah, it's okay. All right. Well, we'll wait for Patrick to get back here a little bit, but
okay.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay, am I back now? I'm just gonna just close every tab I got.
I think that's good. Yeah, the audio's back. Your video's still frozen.
What if I pause this?
Yeah, maybe drop out of the meeting and come back. It might help.
Is it better? Oh, now there's two of me. Perfect. Good.
There you go. That is much clearer. Is that
Right
a
on.
different connection?
I just hotspotted my computer. That's our Canadian.
That's
That's
I
our
end up doing
Canadian.
this all the time. You know, as somebody who if you watch the early Conversations with Jack episodes, I used to be on the move a lot more than I am now. And hotspotting was the only way that I could get a consistent connection with anything.
It's so much better. They're doing they're doing construction down the street from me as well. So they're just digging up all the fiber optic wires and all that good stuff. Anyways, where did I leave off? I was building.
Yeah, I think you were talking a little bit more about sort of verifiable data and sort of like the original founding of Jackal and what your journey has been there.
Yeah, so verifiable data and having self-custodial permissions and ownership of files and being the only people to access it is really important for a bunch of different use cases. But when we were looking at the current landscape, when you're thinking about decentralized data storage, it was all marketplace based and you don't have privacy or permissions. So that wasn't really good for us. So we were just like, okay, we can build this better. So we built a smart contract on Secret Network, which would manage permissions. We built a peer-to-peer caching layer for hot storage. So you had like speed and utility associated with the data storage itself. And then we use cold storage on Filecoin originally to kind of archive files and stuff like that. And then we realized that like the amount of throughput needed for this protocol, it was a better idea for us to build our own L1 because we wanted to alter the modules at its core. So we built our own, like about 3 or 4 custom modules. We have a file tree, an encrypted file tree on chain. We have a storage module that manages the storage deals and detection of loss and proof of persistence and all that stuff. And we played with the Mint module a little bit so we can incentivize validators and storage providers and all that good stuff. So that's kind of how we ended up here.
Yeah, I mean that's quite the journey. So yeah, I guess one thing that I didn't hear in that was like what got you started on this sort of verifiable data thing. There's a lot of different reasons I could imagine, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, originally is the idea was, can we create a scalable public cloud environment with the security posture of a clean forensic environment was like the concept originally. So we would need to have permissions, number one, we would need to have encryption, number two, self-custodial ownership, and you also need to kind of have the ability to have the files like or encrypted kilobyte chunks of the files proved on chain that the public cloud that we created continues to store the file and verify that it continues to be there. So we have a redundancy with 3 times redundancy on all kinds of different machines. And in the case that one kind of unplugs, what will happen is the storage deal is broken after a certain amount of time, and then a new provider can remake that deal with the protocol and then copy from the other forms of redundancy on the network. And then we'll always have 3. So that's kind of, that was the idea is can we create a scalable forensic environment in a public cloud? And then we started to realize that there's a lot more use cases for this and just the ability to have access to off-chain data storage on-chain and have permissions and have privacy and the ability to share any size of data anywhere in the world in like 6 seconds is pretty fascinating because you just change the permissions, you don't have to move the data. So that was kind of, there's all kinds of different use cases that we're exploring and we're just really excited about in general.
Cool. Yeah, so which of those use cases in particular are you guys working on right now?
Yeah, so we built the infrastructure layer, so the first one. So now we have this protocol, and we're looking at a bunch of different verticals right now. The one that I think is really fascinating is supply chain documents. Right now, the supply chain is kind of like the wild west when it comes to these documents, which is pretty fascinating. So there's about 7.8 tons of paper files that moves through the supply chain every year, and they're completely they're fungible. So and everyone kind of it's a kind of a gray area with these bill of landings and airway bills and all these different things, and the supply chain brokers are double brokering, and then the haulers are double brokering to each other, and then the haulers are forging signatures of the receiver, and there's no source of truth in this industry at all.
when it comes to the documents itself. And then if something goes wrong, then it's a blame game of who altered the paper document, or did it get torn, or did it get wet, and then your shipment's missing. Or the other thing that's pretty crazy about that industry is in Canada, $24 million worth of gold was stolen a few months ago by just forging a bill of landing and just taking custody of it at the airport. So it's pretty interesting. So I'm doing a lot of research in that area, but our focus more is to provide the infrastructure to other smart contract-based L1s is the big fascinating thing for us right now. So integrating with like Neutron or Archway or Agoric or Juno or any of these L1s, and providing the ability for those smart contracts to access self-custodial scalable data storage with privacy and permissions unlocks all kinds of really interesting use cases, like peer-to-peer file transfer or compute over data, or data marketplaces. If you want to sell, you can create data DAOs in theory, and then curate these really valuable data sets and then sell access to them. Ransomware protection, e-signatures, decentralized CDNs, web scale applications, just in general, and kind of giving the ability for blockchains to build full stack solutions is pretty fascinating in my mind. So I'm kind of more excited what other people are building right now, to be honest.
Cool. Well, what are the primary uses on Jackal right now? Which one of those particular ones are you most excited about?
Yeah, so right now what we did is we built the infrastructure and then we slapped a front end on it, like a Dropbox, basically. So if you go to app.jackalprotocol.com, you can just have it as a personal cloud, where you can just use it like a Dropbox, or you can use it as a backup. That is kind of the main use case of Jackal right now. There's about kind of 70, 78, so very early for us, 78 active users that are using it every day, which is pretty fun for us. Bottom of the bear market, we still got some people here, which is exciting. But yeah, so that's the easiest for a B2C end user that wants to just have access to decentralized data storage. That's the easiest way. Outside of that, what we're really focused on is, if you look at the protocol as a business, and how does the business make money, is it makes money by storing unique terabytes of data storage, and we need to store on petabyte scale to make it profitable for the entire network. So a big focus of ours is actually integrations with other applications, whether that's OmniFlix, for example, or whether that's Stargaze, or whether that's large applications in the Cosmos ecosystem that have really large off-chain data that they need to put somewhere. And often it's stored on a Microsoft server, or it's stored somewhere and they're pinning it to IPFS, which is really just a discovery layer, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So you still need to store it somewhere. And we've noticed issues where NFTs are going missing at the bottom of the bear market because someone forgets to renew a visa, or the creator just doesn't want
their AWS account dies.
Exactly, right? So is there a way to have provable on-chain access, or you can do really interesting things where you can actually integrate into transaction fees? So every time you have a transaction, you pay for the storage, or the end user can actually take custody of that media file if they buy the NFT. So music stuff, there's some people doing decentralized science on Jackal where they're looking to store human genomes, which is really interesting. So there's all kinds of different unique use cases, but at the end of the day, it's just it's infinite white space in this when you have an infrastructure layer like this, and it's exciting to see all the different use cases. But primarily, it's all B2B, and it's integrations on the B2B side. So we're building out an API as well, so you don't really get the self-custodial nature of it, but you get like the geo distribution, which is usually really expensive. You also kind of get the on-chain provability and all that good stuff too. So
you custody keys on behalf of users?
People wanted an API. Yeah, so we built an API. We don't custody keys if you just go and use Jackal directly. So there's the JavaScript integrations, or we have a Golang, you can self-host an API if you want. But we're also building like another API, kind of like a Pinata, where people want to use it that way, so they can use it that way. But at the end of the day, we're not giving up the self-sovereignty of the underlying infrastructure, where anyone with a Jackal address can just show up and purchase a storage account.
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of interesting attempts to make the UX around key storage better. Seeing things. Did you see the Osmosis presentation on account abstraction?
I thought that is so important for us. it's at the end of the day, it's when we go to a law firm, for example, we're like, hey, you have all this data. It would be really great for you guys to be protected from ransomware. You should probably put it on Jackal, even if it's just a backup. So that only way into this kind of storage account is physically harming you, which is really good for you. But then you have to go, okay, step one, get a Coinbase account, buy Atom, go to Osmosis, swap for Jackal, go to Jackal, buy a storage account. And it gets pretty ridiculous from that side of things for us. So the onboarding experience, the key management, account abstraction, all that good stuff is really, really what we're excited about recently.
Did you see the Kato announcement with Noble?
I saw it come across LinkedIn, believe it or not, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's where all the posts are nowadays.
Yeah, we out there, we out there in the interwebs, all over them. Yeah, this is something that I've been working on a lot over the last couple of years, is broader usability of the Cosmos ecosystem. And that's been lower level stuff like different IBC protocols to help, like packet forward middleware and swap it forward to help move forward the IBC user experience and make that a lot easier. But then also on the fiat integration side with Noble and helping make sure that there's a smooth line from fiat into Cosmos. And I think that Kato integration in particular really fills the need. Like, I have a credit card, I want to buy tokens on a blockchain. Like, you can now do that into Cosmos in a way that you couldn't in the past. And I think that that's probably the biggest difference with Cosmos right now versus Cosmos a year ago, 2 years ago.
You're 100% correct. And I think it's really important. What we're excited about too is we want to take USDC as payment as well, is another thing that we want to integrate Noble USDC. We also want to integrate all kinds of different assets, but it's important to have a reasonable onboarding experience, because if you look at Jackal, what we believe is we have a data storage public cloud environment where you have the highest digital privacy and cybersecurity posture possible on the open internet right now, but it's the hardest onboarding experience that we have compared to pretty much every other competitor. That's like the fundamental flaw of the building in the space, is we're all early, but sometimes it's too early too.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So, one of the use cases that I've always been most interested in with Jackal is the sort of law firm and legal use case.
Yeah.
I think that the verifiability that blockchains offer is potentially a game changer for a lot of legal applications, and especially as we're moving into the era of legal AI and like that is the other emerging technology that has a ton of opportunity to basically obsolete a lot of the work that lawyers do. And on the blockchain side, it's around verifiable contracts and the ability, there's been some work on legal smart contracting languages that takes legal language and converts it into computer code that can run on blockchains. The verifiability and document security stuff, I think, is like the chain of custody. That stuff is very, very interesting too. And that's what you're working on. And then on the AI side, it's the generation of contracts and other things from existing corpuses of work. And that obviously plays into the verifiable data side. What are the biggest pushbacks you're hearing from folks when trying to sell into that market?
The hardest thing when we're speaking with them is it's scary to their risk department. They don't really understand, because when we stopped, our early BD push was actually strictly law firms, and we reached out to as many law firms as we possibly could. We had about two of them onboarded after like probably 300 no's, which is interesting. But people that did onboard and are perfect, our perfect customer is a new person that entered the board that's also like secretly a crypto degen on the side. It's like that's our perfect model right there. But at the end of the day, it's hard to cross this knowledge gap between the current state of the legal system and their current infrastructure and their current tech stuff in general to why blockchain is a better technology. So we found a lot more success B2B in Web3 to start, actually. because you don't have to cross this knowledge gap and do all this education about why this having a immutable source of truth or self-custody or ownership or on-chain provability of things, right? So kind of our easiest onboarding experience is predominantly just Cosmos, other applications, whether it's Stargaze or OmniFlix or pretty much any of those, easy on, and they can integrate on-chain too. That's the other beautiful thing, where they can just use their JavaScript libraries or all kinds of different stuff that way, right?
Yeah. You know, I think that like the previous wave of Cosmos adoption was a lot of developers and builders, which is fantastic because that's who we marketed to. And we've done by far the best job at organic adoption amongst that segment in crypto. And I think you can look at the electric capital developer numbers around that. And I think that a lot of the activity in the last cycle was retail money coming into tokens and founders doing a lot of B2B sales with each other. However, in this coming cycle, I think it's going to be incredibly important that we bring in new usage. So yeah, I'm excited about the new usage piece, which is why I'm kind of digging into some of these legal use cases and some of the other use cases you're working on.
It's really fascinating, but the flip side of that is with the ability to have this off-chain, this storage layer, and I guess you'd also need a compute layer, and there's all kinds of other options for that kind of within Cosmos and outside of Cosmos. You can create full stack companies on these rails, and you can think about integrating with law firms. Awesome ransomware backups. You can have e-sign, which is pretty fascinating. We actually have a DSIG module that we haven't kind of hooked into the chain. We stripped it off early days, but we haven't put it back on, where you can have a document and you can propose a contract to another user, and it's just like governance, right? You approve, deny, abstain, and then you can do that with that document itself. It's pretty fascinating that way. But the ability to create like a full stack law firm, it's pretty interesting on this technology where you can template all the contracts. You can either use on-chain integrations or law APIs, and then you can really hyper deflate legal costs that way. You can have legal DAO. It's pretty, when you start to kind of step back and look at what you can do by having storage, the chain for the, like at the end of the day, it's just your consensus engine and your back end. And then you can kind of look at compute if you need compute, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. You know, I think that I've been hearing this for a long time, and, you know, we work with way more lawyers than I want to work with. You know, shout out to all the crypto lawyers doing utterly thankless work. You guys are the unsung heroes of this industry. But what we haven't seen is major law firms or even crypto native law firms taking the dive and doing that full stack thing. And I think that your comments around user experience during the last cycle are really indicative of why that happened. I think that in this cycle, you know, stuff like the fiat on-ramps, stuff like the ease of use around different protocols, the account abstraction stuff, I think it's becoming possible now to do that in a way where it wasn't prior. And what we really need is like a proof of concept org that actually executes on this. So, you know, if I was you, I would be trying to find a lawyer to base their practice on this and find your first customer there that wants to do that full stack work, and then take that case study and expand it into a broader market.
It's pretty fascinating, and you're 100% correct where the onboarding and the UX wasn't really there, but it also kind of seems in the last cycle, we're newcomers, right? Am I gone again?
No, you're here. I got you.
In the last cycle, it seemed like it was such euphoria, and it was just kind of me coming in. So I'm not from the blockchain space before 2021 November. So watching everything play out was pretty interesting, but it seems like a lot of people rushed to the path of least resistance to the most amount of money possible, but no one did the boring cryptography or the infrastructure work. it was really interesting from that. And I'm happy that we had this last year, 2 years of just boring cryptography and boring infrastructure work and all the boring kind of pieces that we need to put together to actually have an ecosystem that is functional for use cases other than gambling.
Yeah, I mean,
Day,
you
right?
know, this is the reality of our industry, and like, you know, the folks that have not really leaned into the gambling side, it's been hard. And like, you know, I built the Rails, and you know, that's its own thing. Yeah, shifting topics a little bit. You're working on some really exciting interchain accounts work. And I think that one of the things that I'm most passionate about is a lot of these more complex cross-chain use cases. Do you want to talk through the interchain accounts work that you guys are doing? Or it sounds like interchain queries too with the data verifiability.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. So you have to remember that I'm not a developer, but I have a pretty good in-depth. I know that you guys did a lot of work on ICA as well, I believe, right? So let's take a Neutron, for example. So on Neutron, we would have to build an outpost contract, and it would have to make contract calls between the Agoric apps or Agoric users to access that self-custodial storage account, basically, right? IBC packets would be sent from the outpost contract to the Jackal chain back and forth, pretty much giving them the ability to kind of update their file trees and the storage module and the access permissions and pay for the storage account and all that good stuff. And then at the end of the day, we'd also have like a JS web client where it would make it would have the encrypted files and make contract calls to the storage network. So that's kind of our kind of initial plan for bringing the ability for every chain to have access to scalable off-chain data storage that's our master plan. And if you want to take a step back and look at it, some people might be familiar with Filecoin Virtual Machine, which is something that's pretty exciting in the Filecoin ecosystem, where now they have the programmability and the ability to deploy smart contracts for things like perpetual data storage. But they're going the monolithic blockchain way, and we're kind of doing it the Cosmos way, which is pretty fun from that standpoint, where they have this proof of work blockchain. Now they build this L2 where you can kind of now have a little bit of programmability and do that stuff, but you have to bridge over there to get there, and you have to stay there to build your app there. We think it's pretty fascinating that we can actually bring our own access to data storage directly to every generic smart contract L1, and have access there. It's fascinating.
Like, this is why IBC wins. You know,
it is.
I think that broadly in the Ethereum ecosystem and in the Bitcoin ecosystem, I saw this vividly when I worked at Blockstack, where we built an early version of that storage locker thing on top of Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin blocks take 10 minutes to, just one example of this, and I'll show a couple more outside of it. Yeah. But the original Blockstack protocol, because Bitcoin blocks take 10 minutes to confirm, they had written the first implementation of Blockstack in Python. And when I asked them why that was, I was like, don't you want more performance? Don't you want more robustness out of your software? They said, oh, Bitcoin blocks take 10 minutes to confirm, and it takes us 5 minutes to process a block. So we're processing twice as fast as the Bitcoin network goes. And I remember thinking, oh my God, really? And I think that you see this in Ethereum too. You know, in the proof of work protocol, confirmations took a long time to confirm. And what did they do? They built in probabilistic finality back into proof of stake in this incredibly convoluted way that I think has honestly made the protocol a lot slower and a lot less resilient. And you see that with the increasing censorship on main chain Ethereum and the centralization of the validator set. They really missed a lot of things in their proof of stake design. And I think they're replicating these issues in L2 design too. If you look at the bridge to base to get your assets off, it's a single sequencer. It's like not even talking about any of that stuff. You know, if you want to bridge off of base, they hold your assets for 7 days.
Yeah.
Which it's a single sequencer. Why? They don't even have working fraud proofs. early people in that ecosystem, early people in Bitcoin expect poor user experiences. And I think that this has been the big disconnect between like crypto native people and the rest of the Web 2 community, is that there's an entire group of users for whom these really subpar, very slow, high latency user experiences are acceptable. And the rest of the population doesn't see that. And this is the adoption gap that we need to fix. And in that example that you're talking about right there, where there's the chain, you got a bridge there, you got to do all your stuff over there. And then if you want to do anything else, you got to move back. Like IBC was designed to fade into the background. It was designed to be pipes, and it was designed to facilitate much stronger user experiences across different state machines. And what we're seeing now is with the rise of interchain accounts, interchain queries, packet forward middleware, and a bunch of that other stuff, we have the tools to make IBC fade into the background. And broadly, the trend across Cosmos is to do that. And I think that the only other reasonable scaling thing is to make one chain that goes really fast. And we see Solana has made a lot of strides on that. And what we're seeing is the narrative going into this new market that I think we're starting to see the beginnings of here is Cosmos and Solana, with Ethereum playing the role of Bitcoin again. And, you know, we'll see how that evolves, but this is kind of my read on the, on the broader tech side of things.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but the other thing is we want to enter those ecosystems as well, because when you think about our beauty front so far is we've integrated with pretty much every Cosmos app with meaningful off-chain data.
Yeah.
so we've kind of, that was fun while it lasted, but now we have about 17 teams onboarding, and now we're boxed in again. So obviously there's a lot of people working on kind of sending tokens between Ethereum and Cosmos, or sending tokens between Solana or Avalanche and Cosmos, but we need a way to send general messages. So that's what we are excited for the ability to send, like Axelar GMP would be great for us, because now we can actually deploy one of these outposts on any blockchain that is supported by something like that, because we just need to send messages back to the chain to upgrade storage accounts and file trees and that stuff. So that's what we're really excited about, really, is how do we, that's our plan for moral domination, though, Jeff, so don't share it with anyone.
Well, luckily you're live. No one will hear you. Well, Patrick, thank you very much for taking a bunch of time to run us through Jackal today. Anything that you want to say before we bump out here?
Yeah, outside of that, it's I think it's interesting, and I'm excited for the ability to really kind of not have finance use cases for this technology. I think that's the big thing that we're really excited about, is having non-financial use cases, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's using a blockchain for a data permission system rather than using it for a who has what token at what time system. We're excited for different use cases. And other than that, support your local infrastructure project. Kudos is cool. Cash is cool. We think we're cool. Outside of that, that's pretty much everything.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you guys. Thank you very much for coming today. Really appreciate it. Where can folks find out more about Jackal and you online?
Yeah, so just follow us at Jackal Protocol, Jackal_protocol on Twitter, and then we have jackalprotocol.com. Come to our Discord, come chat. We also have a Telegram, and we also have docs.jackalprotocol.com for anyone who wants to nerd out. You can nerd out there.
Cool. Go check it out. Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you very much for your time. Have a great one, and I'll see you online.
I appreciate it. Take it easy.
Thank you, guys.